Hey, what's up guys? I have another knife review for you today, and right now we're looking at the Cold Steel Code 4. And this is one I thought I previously reviewed, but I had a viewer remind me last night that I showed it on camera but never actually did a review on it. So this one goes out to all the very patient people awaiting this particular review. It's been a long time, there's lots and lots of use on this one, so finally time to get it reviewed. So, right out of the gate, I love this knife. I absolutely love this knife. I like it so much that this is one that I often recommend to people. People will send me messages every single day. I'll get at least one or two people asking what the best EDC knife is. It goes something like this. Hey Jeff, what's up? Been watching the channel, like the videos. I'm looking for a knife and I have X amount to spend, whether it's 20, 50, 100, 200, whatever. They'll give me some kind of a limit. And, what's the best EDC knife for that price? And I can't answer that. I really wish I could. But there's so many factors in what makes a knife good for a single person. And like I said, what's good for one person is not good for another person. So what I'll generally do is I'll ask what they're going to use the knife for. I'll ask some simple questions, is there a preference in locking type? Do you have a specific brand you want to try? Stuff like that. And I'll give them the best answer I possibly can. But once you have some experience with knives, it makes it a little bit easier because you can tell me what you like or don't like about that knife that you already own. Then I can go from there. I can definitely narrow down the options and give you some better suggestions for your personal needs. But when people ask me what they want or what a good knife is, and I ask them, what they're going to use a knife for, when they tell me they're going to use it for a profession such as like an EMT worker, firefighter, police officer, carpenter, electrician, if I know they're going to be using a knife for their trade, for their job or their career, day in and day out, this is something that I will often recommend because this is a very good hard use knife. This has longevity. There's a lot of great knives out there, but not quite as strong, in my opinion, as this one. Not something that's going to take as much of a beating as this one. So what makes this so good to me is simplicity. It's a very simple design. It's actually a classic looking design to me with the clip point blade. It looks like a traditional hunting knife. Has a very, very strong back spring on this for the lock back, and of course this has the triad lock. That makes this a very good hard use knife. In fact, most cold steel knives are good hard use knives, but I really like this because of the simple design. It's very ergonomic, has a double finger choil, has a nice big guard. You're not going to ride up on that blade very easily. The pocket clip is out of the way. Okay, so there's a lot of really nice knives out there, but the clip, depending on position, it just kind of, you feel it in the hand. So with this particular design, you can really grip down on this thing and use it really hard and not get any hot spots. Now, these have very thin profile aluminum scales on it, and that's kind of the direction that Cold Steel is going. Lynn Thompson designed this knife to be a little bit slimline and a little bit lighter. This comes in at 4.3 ounces. Now, most of the models from Cold Steel have G10 scales on it, and although they're not incredibly thick, they're not this thin. My first issue that I thought I would have, which I didn't, was discomfort inside the channel here where the blade goes. A lot of times when you do a very thin scale, it doesn't matter what the material, if you don't bevel this right, it becomes uncomfortable to really squeeze hard. And I had no issues with this without gloves on. Now, that was actually a little bit surprising. I really went into this knife thinking that this would be uncomfortable with hard use, but I never had a problem, never had a hot spot. So that's a very good thing. This does have a back spacer in it, so it's an enclosed design. I like the look of it overall. I think it's a very clean looking knife. It's a very simple design. I like the contrast between the dark aluminum scales and all the polished steel, our blade, thumb stud, all the hardware, our very polished pocket clip, of course the back spring again. It's a thicker back spring, has a very, very strong spring in it. Okay, I'm going to talk about that in a minute because that could be the only present problem with these axis lock models is that some people have a hard time using them. I might as well talk about it right now. It has a very, very stiff spring in it, okay? So you need a lot of thumb pressure to push this down. Not only that, but you have to push it down pretty much all the way to release that blade due to the locking mechanism. Some people find that to be difficult. You can see the dent in my thumb. Okay, let's do that again. If I'm holding this down, okay, I'm not gonna be holding it for a long duration of time, but that's a dented thumb. Look at that. It's all misshapen and whatnot. I'm used to this, so it's really not that big of a deal. But let me tell you, a lot of people are very shocked and surprised when they get these knives the first time. They never had either a cold steel knife or they never had, a triad lock, a model of one of their knives. And they're like, man, that is impossible to use. And it really comes down to thumb strength and to just kind of getting used to that. No, it's not a good thing, but it also, you know, it contributes to the strength of the lock. So I don't really see it as that bad of a thing. It's just something you have to get used to. If you have some kind of a medical condition where you don't have a lot of thumb strength, this is not the knife for you. If you're a young boy and you're still building strength in your hands and growing, you know, if you're a teenage girl, or if you're a woman and just you happen to have a little bit of weaker grip, this might not be the knife for you. Even if you're an adult, you know, male. I know guys, you know, strong guys that just have a hard time with this knife. It's not because they're weak. It's just because their thumb strength or whatever it is, they can't get a hang of it, and it's uncomfortable. It hurts their fingers. They don't like that. That's the only negative to this knife. If you can overcome that and you have no problem with other knives, put it this way, if you have some other knives besides cold steels and you find that like some lockbacks are hard to use, forget it. Don't even bother with this. But if you never had an issue with any kind of locks on your knives, it shouldn't be that big of a deal to you. You know, I don't mind the contribution to strength by having it a little bit uncomfortable to unlock. It's very easy to overcome, in my opinion. You just have to get used to it. Of course, it's not going to be for everyone. There's a couple ways that I close this knife. The easiest way to close this knife is with two hands, okay? There's no shame in that. No one cares if you can't close it one-handed. It's not that big of a deal. Usually, you'll want to use your thumb like this, squeeze down so you have a little bit more leverage, and use your other hand to kind of use the top of your finger here once it's unlocked to rotate that blade. Then of course you can remove your fingers from the channel and close it. So this is one way to close it, right? Obviously you can drop the blade if you want to. This is much more dangerous, but sometimes I'll do this, especially if I'm using it one-handed, where I will just literally depress that lock, let the blade swing a little bit, then let go. Very, very important. If you're going to be doing this method, do not hold it like this upright. Do not hold it like this, even sideways, because both upright and sideways will get you cut. When it swings down, it'll have enough swing to cut you. Okay, you want to hold it on a downward angle, drop that blade a little bit, then you can reposition your grip and come in and close it. These are, again, one-handed closing options. A little bit trickier and harder, especially if you don't have strong thumbs, is to use this motion where you're going to choke up on the knife a little bit. Here's your normal grip. Choke up on it. Use your thumb to depress the lock and use your pointer finger to sweep across. Okay? If you can do this method, it's actually the easiest, but you do need a lot more thumb strength for that. Okay? So once again, choke up on it, depress that lock completely, use the pointer finger to just kind of throw it off canter just a little bit. Then you can change your grip and bring it down. There is ambidextrous thumb studs. Now, when we look at this design, I've talked about this before in other videos. Let me do this. Just easier to zoom in. I get a nice crisp video. You'll notice that this is set up so that the right side, okay, for a righty, the thumb stud is sticking out more. Okay, it's on both sides, but the back side's a little bit shorter. If you notice, there is a slotted top to that, so you can put a flathead screwdriver in there. You can remove this thumb stud and reverse it so that the longer side is on the left side. What I really like about this knife is that it is truly ambidextrous. Because the lock is literally on the back of the knife, you can use this knife lefty or righty. As it comes from the factory, you can still use it lefty, but there's not as much thumb stud there. If that bothers you, if you want more, simply swap the thumb stud to the other side. All right, so now it's fully a left-handed usable knife. I really like that because lefties get left out quite often. Now, I'm not lefty, and I have no personal use for that or personal need to use a knife lefty, but you never know what's going to happen. I don't know. Let's say something happens to your right hand. It's very important. You need your knife. You have to get used to using it lefty. So what I do recommend, and I have to do this more often myself, is every single knife I use, I should practice using it lefty as well as righty, okay? Because you never know when you're going to need it. But I do like the fact that you can swap that. So good job, Cold Steel, on making this lefty friendly. All right, another thing to note about this is that because you have a very heavy back spring, there's a lot of tension on this blade, so it's a little bit harder to open. It's very smooth. Once you get the hang of it, it's no big deal. But again, compared to some other models out there, especially some smaller knives, you need a little bit of oomph here. Okay, this is good because the back spring not only obviously locks the blade up, but how it's cut out with the face of the tang of the bottom of the blade here, it also keeps it in. So you don't need a detent on this knife. It automatically wants to stay shut, so it's harder to open up in the pocket. It's hard to open up accidentally. It's not going to shake open because you do have that tension. All right, again, that's part of the lockback design. The reason I'm explaining that to you is that if you're someone who normally flicks their knives out, you need a little bit more oomph to get this to flick out. Not a big deal. Again, just comes with a little bit of practice. So let's talk about this this blade a little bit. It's a hollow ground clip point blade. It's a stout, you know, kind of a chubby clip point. Doesn't really have an extreme curve on the top there at all on the swedge. Does have a nice point. It's not quite as acute or pointy as a spear point. So if you want that, check out that model. It's not as stabby as some people say. And of course, if you're into the Tanto, they do have the Tanto or Tanto model. The blade is 3 7/8 inches long. It is just a little over 3.5 millimeters on the blade stock here. I think it's 3.55, if memory serves correct. And it is an AUS 8A blade. Now for a $60 knife, which is what this is going to cost you on the regular market, I mean, retail is like $100, but you'll never pay that much. About $55 to $65 is the average price for these. I think the AUS 8A is completely adequate and expected. It's a good steel for being kind of a mid-grade steel. Now there's steel snobs out there, they're going to scoff at the idea of having, you know, anything less than maybe like some 01 or S30V or S90V or, you know, 154 or whatever their deal is. Some people just get too infatuated by the steel, and you know, it's really unfortunate. And I don't want to go on a rant here, but there's a lot of people that are missing out some really cool knife designs simply because they don't have that next greatest super steel in it. You know, and that's unfortunate. If you know how to sharpen your knives, it shouldn't matter all that much. As long as you have a good heat treat on your blade, you're good to go. This does retain an edge fairly nicely, and it did come razor sharp. All right, so out of the box, no issues whatsoever with that edge. Just really nicely done. The overall length here is 8.5 inches, and it is 5 inches closed. And again, 4.3 ounces on this. So it's not huge or anything. And trust me, as far as cold steel is concerned, as most of you already know, this is a baby. Most of the knives are bam. You know, in fact, I'm going to do a review on another very large cold steel folder soon. So, you know, I say large folder, but not in cold steel's eyes. In fact, this is probably one of their smaller folders. But it is fairly large, 8.5 inches overall. I would put that in a large category for like an EDC blade. I like the thinner profile. I do like the aluminum. The downside is it's going to be cold in the winter. Do you need the extra grip from like the G10? It's a good thing, but honestly, I find that when I'm using my knives and using them really hard, because there's a difference between purposely testing or using your knives really hard and just EDCing them. If you're EDCing a knife, for most people, not all, because there are exceptions, but for most people, you're not using your knife physically for more than maybe 30 seconds to 40 seconds, right? If that. You might take it out and literally cut one thing. So, you know, the grip and the ergonomics and all that might not matter as much to someone who's using it day in and day out for, you know, maybe 5-10 minutes at a time. And that may not seem like a long time, but 5 minutes of constant use with your knife, you could find, you know, a lot of fatigue on your hand, a lot of discomfort if the design's not good. I do notice that this is not quite obviously as grippy. It's smooth aluminum. So when your hand starts sweating a little bit, it does move around a little bit on you. The double finger choil really helps, and the guard helps you to not ride up on that blade. I did use this very hard for a long period of time. Barehanded, had no issues again with any hot spots, although it got a little bit slippery on me. Never had it slide out of my hand, so I'm so confident in the design that it's not going to be an issue for some harder use. And that's again why I would pick this knife over some other knives on the market in a similar price range. So, you know, you have to kind of go back and forth between like, you know, would you get a Voyager over this because you want the grip? You know, that's up to you. Do consider wherever you live, if you live in an environment where it's cold all the time, this will retain that cold, okay? The aluminum scales in the wintertime get very cold. So if you use this without gloves, it's going to be uncomfortable for the obvious reason of holding a cold piece of metal. So another thing to consider for sure. But, you know, overall for 60 bucks, the fact that there's 6 different designs of this, I really like this knife, and that's why I recommend it and suggest it to so many different people. It is a fantastic option. It's very strong. It comes very sharp. You can use this with a lot of confidence, and that's why I like this one so much. So the Code 4 is definitely a win for me. Highly recommended. For knife people out there with a collection and you like using a bunch of different knives, this is definitely one to put in your EDC rotation. It's something worth trying out, and there's a demand for them, so even if you didn't like it, you know, you can always trade it off or sell it, you know, and get most of your money back. So anyway, highly recommend the Code 4. It is one of my favorites. So that's it. I do have another cold steel that I'm going to be reviewing very soon. Like I said, it's a big Mama Jamma. Mama Jamma. Mama Jamma. Good Lord, I'm making stuff up. Mama Jamma's even made up. And I said Mama Jamma. Anyway, it's a biggie, a biggin. And I can't wait to review that as well, because although impractical for most people, big knives are just fun, aren't they? Love them. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you soon. Take care, guys.